Well, Indonesia will be hosting the G20 summit, a summit that will see the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi participating. With me is the Indian ambassador to Indonesia, to Jakarta, to talk about the summit and, of course, the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So, welcome to WION. And as I just mentioned, the Prime Minister will be visiting Indonesia, and this is not the first time he is visiting Indonesia. So, what will be the focus during his visit, and what have been the preparations that have been put in place ahead of the visit of the Prime Minister?
Namaste to all your viewers. As you have said, this is not the first visit of the Prime Minister. Also, it is not a bilateral visit. It is for a multilateral purpose as part of the G20 summit. However, the visit of Prime Minister Modi in itself has a very big significance because of a couple of reasons. Indonesia is one of our close neighbors, and I'll start by mentioning a few things which we in India do not really realize very easily. First of all, the southernmost point of India, the Nicobar Islands, is just about 190 kilometers away from the northernmost tip of Indonesia. That means it is a very, very close maritime neighbor for us. The second important part which we sometimes do not realize is that Indonesia has the fourth largest population in the world. We are at number 2, and Indonesia, with nearly 270 million people, is the fourth largest populous country in the world. That also makes Indonesia as the third largest democracy in the world. With us being the biggest democracy, Indonesia forms the third largest democracy, which basically gives us the indication that our systems are almost identical. The system of governance, system of progress for the people, policy making, implementation of the policies, they are all kind of remind you when you are in Indonesia and see the system here. Considering all these important features, high-level bilateral visits between such neighbors is a natural thing to assess. And from that point of view, I would say that this visit is very, very timely. The last time he came was in May 2018, and before that there was a prime ministerial visit in 2013. So this frequency is not only required to be shortened, but it's required to be strengthened on a bilateral basis. So from that point of view, we have a very important element of a bilateral discussion between the two leaders, between President Jokowi and Prime Minister Modi, as well as there is an important element of interaction with the Indian community in Indonesia and in Bali.
So you just pointed out that the visit is for a multilateral purpose for the G20 summit. This year's G20 summit, how significant it is for India, given India will be handed over the chairmanship, the presidency of the grouping, an important moment for the grouping and for India as well?
Let us first start by congratulating Indonesia for a very successful conduct of their presidency. It was a difficult moment for Indonesia. The world was recovering from the pandemic. With that in mind, Indonesia put this slogan, recover together, recover faster. Then there was this aggression in Ukraine, which created a lot of division in the world. Within these parameters, the way Indonesia has conducted its presidency, everybody in the world has praised it. However, India is going to be the next president of G20. Important thing to note is that perhaps for the first time, two developing nations are becoming presidents one after the other. Not only that, after India, in the Troika, there will be Brazil, which is another developing country. It is going to be a very important moment for India's presidency. India has recognized the strength of Indonesian presidency in terms of their three strong pillars, and our own conduct of the presidency will certainly take the momentum forward on energy, renewable energy, digital transformation, and health. You can see that in our policies, these form a very important role. Apart from that, very recently, the Honorable Prime Minister has unveiled the logo and the website of our G20 presidency, where he explained our motto. Our motto is based on our age-old dictum, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is very beautifully interpreted as one world, one family, one future. Unless we treat our globe as one family, it will be difficult to take care of all the problems, challenges that the humankind is facing these days. From that point of view, I am sure that Indian presidency will be significant for the entire world, and they will recognize not only the strength of Indian wisdom and customs and philosophy, but also find answers to the challenges in the world that we are facing now.
So you pointed out to the diaspora connect, and you pointed out how the Prime Minister is going to address the diaspora. If you can shed light on the diaspora, the Indian diaspora in Indonesia, because perhaps the diaspora in the West is talked about much, the diaspora in West Asia is also talked about in a different way, but many do not know the Indian origin people in Indonesia, or perhaps the Indians who are contributing to the society of this country.
We have about 160,000 strong Indian diaspora here. One can broadly divide it in 4 different categories. The oldest one came in the middle of the 19th century, mainly from Tamil Nadu region, for the plantation in Sumatra Island. Today, those people number around 100,000. Most of them are in trading, and some of them have moved into coal mining, paper industry, and many other things. But the second wave is in the 1940s and 50s, mostly people from Sindh region and Punjabis who came looking for, finding new avenues for living, displaced from the undivided India. And a large number of people settled down in Indonesia, apart from other countries in Southeast Asia. This population came into trading mainly in sports goods and other things, but after some time, this is the community which came into the infotainment industry. First the Indian film industry, then the film industry in Indonesia, television industry, and then infotainment, what we call now. They are big group in this. Today they would number about 25,000 approximately. The third group was in the 70s and 80s, mostly industrialists who came here to set up textile mills, steel mills, all the big names that you see like Mittals and the other name in steel industry that we have, they all started from here, and there are still their operations left here. And this group itself is about 20,000 strong now, setting up textile industry, yarn industry, they're into steel manufacturing, and mining. And the last category, I put the young generation after the 2000. A large number of multinational companies in Indonesia have Indian executives at top positions, CEOs, COOs, CFOs, and in many cases, most of these positions are held by them. Such population is about 5,000 to 6,000. Almost 800 executives are found in Indonesia and different multinational companies. Important point to note is that Indian investment in Indonesia is about $1.5 billion. There are 3,000 Indian companies which are investing. And most of them are coming from these communities. Also, a fact which is hidden in this statistics is that a large number of Indian companies are investing in Indonesia via their subsidiary in Singapore. And if we calculate the actual Indian investment either via Singapore or directly, it becomes nearly $52 billion.
So clearly the diaspora playing an important role in the society here, and my question basically was, which you have already answered, is the characterization of this relationship. But nonetheless, I'll ask this question, but perhaps if you can talk about the convergences both countries are having in sectors like connectivity. We know that they were planned to connect Aceh with Andaman Islands, and perhaps on defense as well, if you can shed some light.
Talking of Indian industry and our relationship with Indonesia, there is a natural possibility of bilateral cooperation. If you see today, we have a presence of almost all the top brands of industry from India present in Indonesia in one form or the other. Whether we talk of Adani's or Ambani's or Tata's or Birla's, they are big in their presence here. Apart from these big names, you have automobile industry, TVS, Tata Motors. They all have a sizable presence and they want to expand. Apart from them, pharmaceutical industry has a big presence here. There are some other names. Slowly, the smaller and diverse field companies in India, whether it is FMCG, oil industry, soap making, ion exchange, some is water purification. There are large number of these companies which have started coming to Indonesia. That itself shows the potential that Indonesia holds for the Indian companies. One of the most glaring example has been GMR, which has been given or which has won an international tender for expansion and renovation of the airport in Medan. The current footfall in that airport is just about 7 to 8 million every year, which is supposed to be increased to about 65 million people over the next 25 years with an investment of $6.4 billion. This is a very encouraging sign because other Indian industries and companies should see Indonesia as a potential place for future operation. Indonesia, as you know, currently has a GDP of 1 trillion with a population of 270 million. It basically gives them a per capita GDP of nearly $4,000. And this GDP is almost double of India. But they want to become a $10,000 per capita country by 2030. That makes if they have to achieve this goal, they'll have to improve their GDP every year or increase their GDP every year by 14 to 15%. That means they are looking for huge amount of investment. Indian companies can fill in this gap very, very effectively.
So my last question to you is the cultural connect between the two countries. While we know that we're separated by the ocean, the Indian Ocean, there is a connect. Essentially, if you just go around, I mean, you look at Bali, I mean, there's a lot of cultural connect. How can both countries leverage on this to build on the relationship, and how it becomes a pillar in this relationship?
Indian diaspora and Indian population itself has a big connect between India and Indonesia. Apart from that, Indonesia also has become one of the most favorite destinations for the Indian tourists. Today, Bali has Indians coming as the second largest foreign tourist population. In Indonesian government has itself realized this potential. And our ancient connect is the link which is bringing in Indonesian tourists Indian tourists to Indonesia in hordes. That linkage, in my opinion, started with the advent of Buddhism, 4th century BC, but it picked up tremendously in the medieval period between the 4th century AD to 14th century AD. There are large number of imprints of that connect that we have had. Whether you talk of Borobudur temple, Prambanan temple, they are prime examples of both effect of Buddhism and effect of Hinduism in not only in Bali but the entire population in Java Island and Sumatra Island to some extent. One of the major connects that we can find is in the language. There are large number of words in Bahasa Indonesia which are exact similar in meaning and sound and meaning. For example, the most prominent example that can be seen is the word Dirghayu. The same meaning, long live. When they want to say long live Indonesia, they say Dirghayu Indonesia. The words like in education sector, whether it's guru, it's sishya, it's ashram, it's swarga, it's naraka, they are all the same in Bahasa Indonesia. We have a large number of words which have a direct connect with our Indian language. Bali has a special script, Balinese script, and that script is almost similar to the Brahmi script which we have had in India. And the language has similar roots as the Prakrit language that we have had. Number of consonants is the same as in Brahmi, Prakrit language, etc. Lot of connotation in terms of religious practices, lot of connotation in terms of our religious scriptures, whether it is Mahabharata, Ramayana, characters in the Mahabharata and Ramayana. They are all making us link together in an intractable manner. And I would say that this connect is realized by the government of Indonesia as well, and this connect is something which is prime mover to strengthen our bilateral bonds.
And are we helping them to restore some temples? We have done so in many countries in the ASEAN region. So
we have already done here as well. Large number of archaeological survey projects have run here in Prambanan temple, in Borobudur temple, and we are always ready to help. They have always been open to our suggestions, and we will be doing so in the future as well as and when the opportunities come.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. It was pleasure having you with WION, and hopefully as the visit continues, we will see more of you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
With video journalist Sidhant Sibal for WION in Bali, Indonesia.